I mean, the harsh punishment of Gaza has been miserably treated for a long time, but it really escalated in January 2006. And the reason was very straightforward. You'd read it on the front page of the New York Times. In fact, you could read adjacent columns on the front page of the New York Times, one of which praised the United States for its dedication to democracy and all wonderful things. And the one right next to it by Stephen Engelberg said that it was a couple of days after the election, that the U.S. and Israel are going to impose harsh sanctions on Palestinians for voting the wrong way, and the only free elections only take place in the Arab world. And as far as I can see, that didn't elicit a whisper of protest, even comment. Yeah, sure, okay, people vote the wrong way, I got to punish them. In Gaza, the punishment was severe. The siege was imposed. It went to the extent that Israel even blocked water from the arid Gaza Strip. In the months that followed, the violence increased. In fact, by June, Israel had fired 7,700 rockets into the Strip, and there was incursions and killings and so on. Without going through the whole history, the punishment picked up much more harshly a year later, in June 2007. What happened then is that the U.S. and Israel and the Palestinian Authority tried to carry out a military coup in Gaza to overthrow the elected government and to institute the rule of a Fatah strongman, Mohammed Dahlan. Well, the coup was beaten back, and Hamas took over, and that's when the punishment really became savage. And this incident is described here as proof of, Hamas terrorism. How could they dare not accept a U.S.-run military coup that was designed to overthrow the elected government? And it just goes on from there. By now, it's it's not the worst crime in the world, but it's surely one of the most savage. I mean, Israel's keeping the population as kind of caged animals. They're not letting them all die because that would cause too much of an international uproar. But they're barely permitting them to survive. I mean, you take a look at the restrictions on goods that can go in. I mean, it's shocking, pencils, medicines, almost anything you can think of. Anything beyond bare survival is blocked. Egypt cooperates, although the last couple of days it's backed off. The United States, of course, cooperates. Israel is also regularly attacking Gaza. One thing, it just goes in and kills people if it feels like, but it's also trying to drive people away from the borders. That's fertile land, so drive them away from the borders with constant attacks, gunfire, and so on. It's also been driving them away from from their territorial waters. So Israeli gunships over the past 10 years have been driving fishermen closer and closer to the shore. By now, they can't go out more than a few miles from the shore, which kills the fishing industry, and for one reason, because the sewage and power plants have been destroyed by the Israeli attacks. So everything near the shore, it's so totally polluted you can't fish. Maybe it's coincidence, maybe it isn't, but these attacks on Gaza fishermen, which all of this is, of course, criminal. I mean, there's no point even talking. I mean, it happens to be in violation of Security Council Resolution 1860, which called for an end to the siege. But the idea of talking about law when you bring up something that the United States and Israel are doing is like a bad joke. So yes, it's illegal, known to be illegal. But in fact, that Security Council resolution passed 14-0 with one abstention. You can guess who the abstention was. That means it's inapplicable. But so of course it's criminal. To get back to the sea, in 1999, the British Gas, major British gas company, discovered apparently substantial reserves of natural gas off the coast of Gaza, in fact, all along the eastern Mediterranean, but particularly in the territorial waters of Gaza. Well, Israel, of course, wants the gas. And right at that point, they started driving fishing boats out of their own territorial waters towards land. And in fact, Israel has been negotiating with British Gas to contracting to get the oil that's extracted from Gazan territorial waters. Well, there was a little, I and a couple of other people tried to initiate some inquiries and protests about that. There could be a court case about it in Britain, but there's a hang-up, it turns out, which terminated the inquiries. Palestinian authorities involved. They're covering for it. And once you reach that barrier, the inquiries can't go on. There's a lot of ugly things there, but back to your point, it's the punishment of Gaza. It really took off after they voted the wrong way in a free election, very similar to Haiti in that respect. It's not the only case. And it's pretty ugly. I mean, the current example, the flotilla, which you all read about, that's multiply criminal. For one thing, attacking ships in international waters is, of course, a crime. It's a violation of every principle of maritime law. Killing people when you do it is even a worse crime. Here, it's accepted. So if you look at the commentary here, say the New York Times, it's run a couple of op-eds on it. Almost every one is from an Israeli government official or some sympathizer. I mean, I happened to be listening to NPR, the liberal voice, a couple of days ago. I torture myself with that every once in a while. So they have two commentators from what's called the left and the right who comment on the week's events, David Brooks and E.J. DeYoung. And I happened to catch that segment. They were asked what they thought about the attack on the flotilla. And they were kind of competing with one another to see who could be more vociferous in supporting it. I mean, that's the realm of discussion in the United States. I should say I think the U.S. is off the international spectrum on this. I haven't seen anything like that in any other country. But here it's almost uniform support for it, in articulate opinion at least, which is not surprising because the U.S. is doing it. So, of course, there's total support in the articulate classes. Furthermore, it's worth bearing in mind that Israel has been doing this for about 30 years. For decades, they've been attacking ships in international waters from Cyprus to Lebanon and capturing them, killing people, kidnapping them. Often they've kidnapped people and put them into secret Israeli prisons. They have a big kind of gulag of their own. And holding them as hostages, openly, keeping them as hostages. And of course the U.S. pats them on the back so they can keep doing it. Well, this is another case. This one happened to elicit some international attention. Now, Israel's justification for it is that they have to protect themselves from rocket fire from Gaza. Well, putting aside any question about do you have to kill people and stop ships at sea to block that, the whole thing is a total farce. I mean, you can't discuss this in the United States, but the facts are very clear. Israel knows precisely how to stop rockets. Precisely. The U.S. knows too. They can accept Hamas's offer to reinstitute a truce. There was a truce instituted in June 2008. Israel agreed to a truce. They said they'd open the borders, and they partially did, but not completely. And in return, Hamas said that it would stop all rocket firing, and it did. You can read that on the Israeli government webpage.